Maria remembered the day her life changed. It wasn't dramatic like in the movies. There was no single moment where everything fell apart. Instead, it happened slowly, like watching sand slip through your fingers, no matter how tight you tried to hold on. 10 years ago, she stood on stage at the Grand Theater downtown. The spotlight made her skin warm, and when she sang, 2,000 people held their breath. Critics wrote about her voice in newspapers. They called her magical. Her photo hung in the lobby next to the greatest singers who had ever performed there. Back then, Maria wore silk dresses, and people asked for her autograph after shows. She wasn't rich, but she was comfortable. She had a small apartment in a decent neighborhood. Her mother lived 2 blocks away in a cozy place Maria helped pay for. Life felt secure, like standing on solid ground. She thought it would always be this way. Then Ricardo left. Her husband of 15 years packed his bags on a Tuesday morning while she was at rehearsal. He didn't leave a note. He didn't leave an explanation. What he did leave was debt. Thousands and thousands of dollars in debt that Maria never knew existed. Credit cards she never used. Loans she never signed for. But her name was on the accounts, and suddenly the banks wanted their money. Maria tried to keep performing. She really did. But the stress affected her voice. She would stand on stage and feel her throat tighten. Notes that used to come easily now felt like climbing a mountain. Directors noticed. They started giving her smaller roles. Then they stopped calling altogether. The opera world is small and news travels fast. People heard she was having problems. They heard about the divorce, the debt, the missed rehearsals. Slowly, the invitations stopped coming. She sold everything valuable she owned. The pearl necklace her grandmother gave her. The piano she'd saved 3 years to buy. Her collection of vintage records. It wasn't enough. The debt felt like an ocean and she was drowning. Then her mother got sick. It started with forgetting small things, where she put her keys, what day it was. Then she forgot how to get home from the grocery store. The doctor said it was dementia and it would only get worse. Her mother needed constant care, medication, and eventually a facility that could help her properly. Maria looked at the numbers. The medical bills, the debt collectors calling every day, the rent she couldn't pay. She had $200 in her bank account and no job. At 42 years old, she had to figure out how to survive. She applied everywhere: coffee shops, retail stores, reception desks. But she'd been out of a regular job for 20 years. She had no recent work history except singing, and nobody wanted to hire an opera singer to fold clothes or answer phones. They said she was overqualified. They said she wouldn't stay. They said no, again and again. That's when she saw the advertisement. A wealthy family needed a live-in maid. Room and board included. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady. Most importantly, she could send money to her mother's care facility every month. Maria stared at that advertisement for 3 hours before she finally called. The Thornton family lived in a house that looked like something from a magazine. 3 stories, a circular driveway, gardens that someone was paid to maintain. Mrs. Thornton interviewed her in the sitting room, a place so fancy that Maria was afraid to sit on the furniture. The woman looked her up and down like she was inspecting a piece of furniture herself. Maria got the job. She moved into a small room in the basement, next to the laundry area. It had a single bed, a dresser, and a tiny window near the ceiling that showed people's feet walking by on the sidewalk above. This was home now. The work was hard. She cleaned 5 bathrooms every day. She mopped floors that seemed to stretch forever. She scrubbed pots and pans after the family's dinner parties. She washed clothes and folded them with perfect creases. She dusted furniture, vacuumed carpets, and cleaned windows until they sparkled. Her hands, which once moved gracefully while she sang, now turned red and rough from chemicals and hot water. The worst part wasn't the physical labor. It was the invisibility. The Thornton family walked past her like she was furniture. They talked about their lives while she cleaned around them, never once asking about hers. She was just the maid. Just the woman who made their lives comfortable. Every night, Maria would lock herself in that tiny basement room. She'd look at her reflection in the small mirror above the dresser. Who was this woman with tired eyes and rough hands? Where did the singer go? Sometimes she'd open her mouth and try to sing quietly, just to see if the voice was still there. But the notes felt stuck in her throat, buried under exhaustion and shame. She kept a small box under her bed. Inside were newspaper clippings from her performances. Reviews that called her brilliant. Programs with her name printed in elegant letters. A photo of her in a red gown, smiling like she owned the world. She never showed anyone these things. What would be the point? That life was gone. This was her reality now. On her first paycheck, Maria sent almost all of it to her mother's care facility. She kept just enough for basic necessities. The facility sent her updates. Her mother was comfortable. She had her own room. Nurses who were kind. She didn't remember Maria anymore, but she was safe and cared for. That's what mattered. That's why Maria could endure anything. 3 months passed this way. Wake up at 6, clean all day, send money to her mother, sleep in the basement. Repeat. Maria told herself this was temporary. She told herself she'd find a way out. But deep down, she felt trapped. The debt wasn't shrinking fast enough. Her mother's bills kept coming. And her voice, that beautiful gift that once defined her entire life, felt like it belonged to someone else. Someone from a different lifetime, someone she used to be. Maria didn't know it yet, but her carefully hidden past was about to be exposed. And when it was, everything would get so much worse before it could ever get better. For now, though, she scrubbed floors and tried to forget she'd ever been anything more than invisible. Maria made a mistake on a Tuesday afternoon. It was the kind of mistake that seems so small in the moment but changes everything. She was cleaning the guest bedroom on the second floor when she heard footsteps. The Thorntons' daughter, Ashley, burst into the room with 2 of her friends. They were 17, maybe 18. The age where everything feels like a joke and nothing has real consequences yet. Maria quickly gathered her cleaning supplies. She knew the rules. When family or guests were around, she should make herself scarce. But as she hurried toward the door, her bucket tipped over. Water spilled across the hardwood floor, and with it, the small cardboard box she'd been carrying. The box tumbled open. Old newspaper clippings scattered everywhere. Photos slid across the wet floor. Maria's heart dropped. She'd been sorting through her things that morning, deciding what to keep and what to throw away. She must have accidentally grabbed the box along with her cleaning supplies. Ashley picked up one of the clippings before Maria could stop her. Her eyes went wide as she read it. Then she picked up a photo. In it, Maria wore a golden gown, standing on stage with her arms raised mid-performance. She looked like a different person, younger, confident, glowing. "Oh my God," Ashley said, her voice sharp with surprise. "Girls, look at this." Maria's hands shook as she tried to gather the papers. "Please, those are private. I'll clean this up right away." But Ashley was already reading out loud. Maria Santos delivers a stunning performance. Her voice brings the audience to tears. She is destined for greatness. She looked up at Maria with something between shock and amusement. "You were an opera singer?" "A long time ago," Maria said quietly. "Please, I need to clean this mess." The other girls crowded around, grabbing more clippings. They passed the photos back and forth, comparing the elegant woman in the pictures to the tired maid in front of them wearing rubber gloves and an apron. "This is insane," one of the girls said. "How do you go from this to, here?" Maria felt her face burn. She wanted to explain. She wanted to tell them about Ricardo, the debt, her mother. But the words stuck in her throat. What did it matter? They wouldn't understand. They'd never had to choose between dignity and survival. Ashley pulled out her phone. Before Maria could react, she'd taken a photo. "This is literally too crazy not to share." "Please don't," Maria said. "Please, I'm asking you." But Ashley was already typing, her thumbs flying across the screen. "From opera singer to our maid. Life comes at you fast." She hit post and looked up with a smile. "Don't worry, it's just for my followers." It's actually kind of inspiring in a sad way. Maria felt something crack inside her chest. She gathered the rest of her things in silence and left the room. Behind her, she heard the girls laughing. Not mean laughter necessarily, just the thoughtless kind that comes from young people who've never known real loss. That evening, Ashley's post started spreading. It wasn't just her followers anymore. People were sharing it, commenting on it. By morning, it had thousands of views. The comparison photos showed Maria in her glory days, next to a screenshot of her cleaning supplies visible in the background of another photo Ashley had taken weeks earlier. The comments were brutal. Some people called it sad. Others made jokes. Guess those high notes didn't pay the bills. From standing ovations to standing over a toilet. Should have saved her money instead of hitting those high notes. People who'd never met her felt entitled to judge her entire life based on 2 photographs. Maria discovered the post when another staff member showed it to her. The housekeeper, an older woman named Brenda, pulled her aside in the kitchen. "I'm sorry, honey. My daughter sent this to me. She thought I'd want to know." Maria stared at the phone screen. Watching strangers dissect her life felt like being naked in front of a crowd. Every failure, every loss, every desperate choice she'd made was now entertainment for people eating breakfast and scrolling through their phones. Mrs. Thornton's attitude changed immediately. Where before she'd been distant and formal, now she was cold. She'd look at Maria with something like disgust, as if poverty was contagious. During dinner parties, Maria heard her telling guests about the situation with the maid in hushed, dramatic whispers. "We had no idea when we hired her," Mrs. Thornton would say. "Can you imagine? An opera singer, and now she's scrubbing our toilets. It's rather tragic, isn't it?" The way she said tragic made it sound like a character flaw. Like Maria had chosen this. Like falling on hard times was something shameful that only happened to weak people who deserved it. Ashley's friends started visiting more often. They'd find excuses to be wherever Maria was working. They'd make requests. "Oh, Maria, could you sing while you mop? Give us a private performance?" They'd laugh when she stayed silent and kept working. One girl even tried to film her, holding up her phone until Maria had to leave the room. The other household staff didn't know how to act around her anymore. Some felt sorry for her and showed it with pitying looks that somehow felt worse than mockery. Others seemed almost satisfied, as if Maria's revealed past proved she wasn't better than them, that she deserved to be here just like everyone else. The worst moments were when Mr. Thornton had business associates over. They'd be in the study, and Maria would bring coffee or clean nearby. Sometimes she'd hear them talking about the viral Maid story. They'd debate whether it was real or staged. They'd speculate about what she'd done wrong to end up here, and Maria would stand there, invisible again, listening to strangers analyze her pain like it was a puzzle to solve. Every night, Maria returned to her basement room feeling more hollow than before. The box of clippings stayed under her bed now, but it didn't matter. Everyone knew. Her past and present were smashed together in the worst possible way, creating something ugly that the internet couldn't stop staring at. She thought about quitting. She thought about it every single day, but then she'd look at the deposit confirmation from her mother's care facility. She'd remember the nurse telling her that her mother smiled when they played music for her, that she seemed comfortable and safe. So Maria stayed. She endured the whispers and the stares and the casual cruelty of people who thought her story was just content to consume. She scrubbed floors and cleaned bathrooms and sent her paychecks to keep her mother safe. And every day she felt a little more of herself disappear, like she was slowly being erased from her own life. What Maria didn't know was that someone in that house was watching. Someone who saw more than just a viral story or a fallen singer. Someone who was about to change everything. Maria held it together for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of whispers and sideways glances. 3 weeks of Ashley's friends treating her like a zoo animal. 3 weeks of Mrs. Thornton's cold stares and the housekeeper's pitying smiles. She kept her head down, did her work, and told herself she could handle anything. Then came the party. Ashley was celebrating something. Her acceptance to college, maybe, or her birthday. Maria wasn't sure. The house filled with teenagers, all dressed in expensive clothes, carrying phones that cost more than Maria made in 2 months. Music pounded through the walls. Laughter echoed down the hallways. Maria tried to stay in the kitchen, away from everyone. But Mrs. Thornton kept calling her out to serve drinks, clear plates, and clean up spills. Each time Maria walked through the crowd, she felt eyes following her. She heard the whispers. That's her. That's the opera singer Maid. Around 10 o'clock, someone turned down the music. Ashley stood on the coffee table, her phone in her hand, a bright smile on her face. "Okay, everyone, we have a special guest tonight. You might have seen her on my post that went totally viral." Maria's stomach dropped. She was carrying a tray of empty glasses toward the kitchen. She tried to keep walking, but Ashley called out to her, "Maria, come here for a second." Everyone turned to look. 20 pairs of eyes locked onto her. Maria wanted to run. She wanted to disappear through the floor. But she couldn't. She needed this job. She couldn't afford to make Mrs. Thornton angry. She walked over slowly, still holding the tray. "So Maria used to be this famous opera singer," Ashley announced to the room. "Like seriously famous. And now she works for us. Isn't that wild?" Some kids nodded. Others looked uncomfortable. A few pulled out their phones to start recording. We should get a performance, one of Ashley's friends shouted. Come on, sing something for us. Yeah, give us a show, another one added. Maria felt her throat tighten. I don't sing anymore. Excuse me, I need to get back to work. Oh, come on, Ashley said, her voice carrying that edge of someone used to getting what they want. Just one song? Everyone wants to hear you, please, Maria said quietly. I really can't. Why not? You used to do it all the time, right? Ashley's smile was bright, but there was something cruel underneath it. Something that enjoyed having power over someone else. The room started chanting. Sing, sing, sing. They thought it was funny. They thought they were being playful. They had no idea they were tearing apart what was left of Maria's heart. Maria set down the tray. Her hands were shaking. I need to go, she said, and walked out of the room as fast as she could without running. Behind her, she heard laughter. She heard someone say, guess she's not that good anymore. She heard phones clicking, recording her retreat. More content for the internet to devour. Maria made it to the basement stairs before the tears came. She locked herself in her room and sat on the edge of her bed, crying so hard her whole body shook. She felt humiliated, worthless, like everything she'd ever been had been stripped away, leaving nothing but shame. The party went on for hours. The music, the laughter, the sounds of people having fun while she sat alone in the dark. Maria looked at the box under her bed. She thought about pulling it out and burning everything inside. What was the point of holding on to the past? That person didn't exist anymore. Around midnight, the house finally went quiet. The guests left. The family went to bed. Maria knew she should sleep, but she couldn't. Her mind was racing. Her chest felt tight. She felt like she was suffocating in that tiny room. She went upstairs. The house was dark and empty. She wandered through the halls without really thinking about where she was going. Her feet carried her to the music room on the second floor, a place she usually avoided because it hurt too much to look at. The room was beautiful. A grand piano sat in the center, polished until it gleamed. Expensive paintings hung on the walls. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the garden. This was a room for people who appreciated music, though Maria had never once heard anyone in the family play the piano. She stood in the doorway for a long time. Then, without deciding to, she walked to the piano. Her fingers touched the keys. They were cool and smooth. She pressed one note, then another. The sound filled the empty room, pure and clear. Something broke open inside her. All the pain and anger and grief she'd been holding back for months came flooding out. She sat down on the bench. Her fingers found a melody she'd played 1,000 times before. And then, for the first time in 2 years, Maria began to sing. It started soft, barely a whisper. The aria from La Traviata, about a woman dying young, leaving behind dreams unfulfilled. Maria's voice cracked at first. It had been so long. But then something clicked. The muscle memory returned. Her voice grew stronger. She sang about loss, about sacrifice, about loving someone so much you'd give up everything, even yourself. She sang for her mother, who no longer remembered her name. She sang for the life she'd lost and the dignity that had been taken from her. She sang for every moment of mockery, every pitying look, every time she'd felt invisible. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't stop. The notes soared through the empty house, filling every corner with sound. It wasn't perfect. Her voice wasn't what it used to be, but it was real. It was honest. It was hers. She didn't know that someone was listening. Mr. Thornton had just returned from a business trip. He'd come in through the back entrance, planning to head straight to his study to finish some work. But he heard the music and stopped. He followed the sound to the music room and stood in the dark hallway, watching through the partially open door. He saw Maria at the piano, her shoulders shaking, her face wet with tears, singing like her life depended on it. He'd heard professional singers before. He'd been to the opera, to concerts, to performances by world-famous musicians, but he'd never heard anything like this. This wasn't a performance. This was someone pouring out their soul. This was pain transformed into something beautiful. This was what music was supposed to be before it became about tickets and reviews and social media posts. Mr. Thornton felt something shift in his chest. He'd walked past Maria 100 times in the last few months. He'd never really looked at her, never really thought about her as a person with a history, with dreams, with a story that mattered. She was just the maid, just part of the household staff, just someone who made his life run more smoothly. But watching her now, he understood. He understood that something terrible had happened under his roof, that his family had participated in cruelty, casual and thoughtless but cruel nonetheless, that a human being had been reduced to entertainment, her suffering turned into content for strangers to consume. The song ended. Maria collapsed forward, her forehead resting on the piano keys, sobbing quietly. Mr. Thornton stood frozen in the hallway. He wanted to say something, to apologize, to help somehow. But he didn't know where to start. Instead, he quietly walked away back to his study. But sleep didn't come that night. He sat at his desk, thinking about the woman crying in his music room, thinking about what kind of person he'd become that he could let this happen in his own home, thinking about what he could possibly do to make any of it right. By morning, he'd made a decision, one that would change everything. Mr. Thornton didn't say anything to Maria the next morning. He watched her serve breakfast, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She moved through the dining room like a ghost, quiet and careful not to draw attention. His wife complained about the coffee being too weak. Ashley scrolled through her phone, barely acknowledging anyone. The whole scene made him feel sick. He went to his office and started making calls. First he called his lawyer, then his accountant. Then he spent 3 hours on his computer researching. He pulled up old articles about Maria's performances. He found reviews, interviews, recordings. He discovered the truth about her husband's disappearance, the debt he'd left behind, her mother's illness. The picture became clear. Maria hadn't failed. Life had crushed her under circumstances that would have broken most people. And instead of breaking completely, she'd done what she had to do to survive. There was courage in that, dignity even. That evening, Mr. Thornton called a family meeting in the living room. His wife sat on the sofa, annoyed at being interrupted during her book club hour. Ashley sprawled in the armchair, her phone in her hand as always. "We need to talk about Maria," he said. His wife sighed. "What about her? If this is about that silly internet thing, it's already old news. Everyone's moved on." "I haven't moved on," he said. "And we shouldn't have let it happen in the first place." Ashley looked up from her phone. "Dad, it's not that serious. It was just a post." "It was public humiliation," he said, his voice harder than usual. "You took someone's pain and turned it into entertainment. You invited your friends to mock her in our home, and we all stood by and let it happen." "She's a maid," his wife said, like that explained everything. "It's unfortunate what happened to her, but that's not our responsibility." "She's a person," Mr. Thornton said. "A talented person who's been through hell. And under our roof she's been treated like she's less than human." The room went silent. Ashley shifted uncomfortably. His wife's face hardened. "What exactly do you want us to do?" his wife asked coldly. "I want us to be better," he said. "But I'm not waiting for that. I'm going to help her myself." Over the next week, Mr. Thornton worked quietly. He reached out to an old friend from college, Victor Chen, who now directed the City Arts Festival, one of the biggest cultural events in the region. They'd been close once, both musicians who'd dreamed of changing the world through art. Victor had followed his dreams. Mr. Thornton had chosen family business and money instead. "I need a favor," Mr. Thornton said over the phone. "I know someone who deserves a chance. A real chance." He told Victor about Maria, about her voice, about what he'd heard that night. Victor was skeptical at first, but he trusted his old friend's judgment. "Send me a recording," he said. "If she's as good as you say, we'll make something work." But there was no recording. Mr. Thornton needed to talk to Maria first, and he had no idea how to start that conversation. He found her in the garden one afternoon, trimming the hedges. She looked startled when he approached, like she was preparing to be scolded. "Maria," he said gently, "can we talk?" She set down the shears, her face guarded. "Of course, sir. Is something wrong?" "No, nothing's wrong. I want to help you." She looked confused. "Help me with what?" "I heard you singing a few nights ago in the music room." Maria's face went pale. "I'm so sorry. I know I shouldn't have been in there. It won't happen again, I promise." "Stop," he said. "You don't need to apologize. I'm not angry. I'm amazed. Maria, you have a gift, a real gift, and I think I can help you use it again." She shook her head, stepping back. "No, that part of my life is over. I can't go back. Why not?" "Because I failed," she said, her voice breaking. "Because I'm 44 years old with rough hands and a voice that's been silent for 2 years. Because I have bills to pay and a mother to take care of. Because I can't afford to hope for something impossible." Mr. Thornton had prepared for this. What if I told you I'd pay for your mother's care? All of it, the medical bills, the facility, everything. You could focus on singing again without that weight on your shoulders. Maria stared at him. Why would you do that? Because it's the right thing to do. Because my family treated you terribly and I let it happen. Because I heard you sing and I know the world needs to hear it too. Tears filled her eyes. I can't accept that. It's too much. It's not charity, he said. Think of it as an investment. I believe in you, Maria. I believe you can be great again. All I'm asking is that you try. She was quiet for a long time. Mr. Thornton could see the war happening inside her, between hope and fear, between the dream of who she used to be and the reality of who she'd become. What would I have to do? She finally asked. Audition for the City Arts Festival. My friend Victor runs it. If you're as good as I think you are, you'll perform on one of the biggest stages in the city. After that, who knows? But you'll have a chance. A real chance to show the world what you can do. I don't know if I can, she whispered. I'll help you. I'll hire a vocal coach. You'll have time to practice. You won't have to work while you're preparing. Everything you need, I'll provide. Maria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Why are you doing this, really? Mr. Thornton thought about that night, standing in the dark hallway listening to her pour her heart out. He thought about the person he used to be, before business and money dulled everything that mattered. Because I used to play piano, he said quietly. Before I took over the family business, I wanted to be a musician. I gave it up for responsibility, for stability, for all the right reasons, but I think about it every day. The music I never made, the person I might have been. When I heard you sing, it reminded me what that feels like, to have something beautiful inside you and nowhere to let it out. Maria looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, I'll try. The next day, Mr. Thornton brought in a vocal coach, an older woman named Patricia who'd trained opera singers for 30 years. She listened to Maria sing once, then turned to Mr. Thornton with wide eyes. Where have you been hiding? Patricia asked Maria. Your voice is extraordinary. Over the following weeks, Maria worked harder than she'd ever worked in her life. She practiced every day, sometimes for hours. Her voice was rusty at first, but it came back stronger than before. The years of pain had added depth to her sound, a richness that hadn't been there when she was younger. Mrs. Thornton watched all of this with barely concealed disgust. She stopped speaking to her husband except when necessary. Ashley avoided Maria entirely, guilt written all over her face whenever they passed in the hallway. But Maria barely noticed. For the first time in years, she felt like herself again. Not the broken woman scrubbing floors. Not the maid people laughed at online. She was Maria Santos, singer, and she had one shot to prove that talent doesn't die. It just waits buried under hardship until someone believes in it enough to dig it back out. The audition was in 2 weeks. Maria was terrified, but she was also ready.